Here we go. We're live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Turning Point. I'm with my dear friends and family here, Edo, Vandell, and David. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to just jump right into it. We wouldn't be making any change here if we weren't talking about what happened to President Trump. I have an article from the Wall Street Journal. Not one article covered Trump's assassination. That's very strange, the attempt on his life. And I don't know. It's just very interesting. I'm going to give my take on this. Personally, guys, this was very significant. It marked history because no president has really faced such threats like this since the days of Reagan and Kennedy. There's a lot of speculation going on. Many people are saying it might have been staged, whether, by the administration itself or the deep state. Some believe it's the latter. Personally, I'll tell you what I think. I think this is following the United Nations playbook designed, which is to erode trust between governments and the people. And that is going to pave way for future political reform. The assassination attempt, in my opinion, was part of a broader initiative to destabilize the current administration. Interestingly, I have a video coming out in the next day or two, but I did speak with an insider who worked very closely with the UN and the central bank under the Bush administration. And he explained that the deep state was making a very big, bold, and strategic move. So I don't know if that had something to do with this, but while, of course, the Trump news was going on, I was looking in another direction as well to see what else was going on. And there was a lot unfolding in the banking system, which we're going to discuss about shortly here. So, David, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Well, I find it very, the timing of everything just absolutely is crazy, just the synchronization of what we're seeing, especially when you look at the political environment. We've watched the rhetoric, as we know, been ratcheted up like crazy. Literally people, on the left, I think Nancy Pelosi saying he has to be eliminated, Biden saying that the guy needs a target on him, on and on and on. And you can see the political divide is just getting broader and broader and broader. And the wedge that they're driving, I think you hit it spot on, between, the government, the politics, and the people. And interestingly enough, with this whole thing, I've got a little clip here that I want to show that when I first saw it, it wasn't so viral. I think this clip is going to go absolutely viral because I want to talk about how this is not a situation of incompetence. It's literally breaching. It's getting on the point of almost criminal negligence, what they allowed happen. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share my screen here. And let me just take a look at if I can do it this way, or if I could actually share, if I need to actually share a video, but I'll try just doing the screen. Looks like I'm going to actually have to share the video itself, and that's not a big deal. Let me just get to it here. And some folks may have seen this. I don't know, but here we go. And if I need to adjust my volume, please let me know. Okay, do you guys see the video there?
I wouldn't even be doing this. I'd be at some beautiful place with gorgeous ocean, the Mediterranean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. See him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And son, I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a Senate.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof with that.
Okay, so let me just stop. I mean, literally, guys, did it stop good? You can literally see now. There is no way they're going to be able to deny this evidence that there's the guy right up there in full view of everybody crawling on the roof. People are calling out to officers, hey, look, what's going on up here? They had plenty of time to take this guy out. And look, when you're dealing with, the security measures, you have to remember the Secret Service gets theirs days before, if not a week plus before the event. And they literally map out the entire place, and they designate spots where there could be threats. You're telling me that this 20-year-old kid scaled up a ladder, crawled up there, people are pointing him out, he's got a rifle, he's right up there, plenty of time to take this guy out, and he gets off 5-6 shots, and that was allowed to happen?
Right.
Guys, there's no way that you can say that there's, in my estimation, that is criminal negligence. It is not just incompetence on behalf of the Secret Service and all the other police agencies that are there to provide security. How did that happen? I don't believe for 1 second that this 20-year-old kid acted on his own accord. Not a chance. I just don't buy it. It doesn't pass the smell test. And so for me, I think you're spot on. I think there's an agenda here. I don't know where it's coming from, but I believe we're going to watch this onion get peeled back now. Having said that, is this an important event historically? Yep, it is. You're right. Last time, any time of attempted assassination, on a president was President Reagan there. Of course, he got shot and recovered, and on and on. The thing, and I guess President George Bush had an attempt where someone threw a dud grenade at him. We don't know if it was a toy one or a real one, but whatever. But my point is this. I believe they're going to take this event and use it as probably one of the biggest distractions that you could ever imagine while they do this and this. While everyone is focused on this whole deal and this whole case and how it's all going to blow up like crazy as a smokescreen, I think they're going to be doing other things in the background. And this is where we want to be paying attention. So, Versan, when you said that you immediately, instinctively started to look elsewhere. Okay, what else is going on here? That is exactly what I did too. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think this is how it's going to be used. It, of course, is political, fodder in a big way. A lot of people feel that Trump has this selection hands down at this point. So that I wanted to share and put my take on it there.
He's certainly locked it in. We're going to move to Vindel, but real quick, I would also like to state that this is something I discussed with a gentleman off record yesterday, is that the fact that this attack did happen could be a reason for now to turn the tables around, and it's not about getting him in office necessarily, but now somebody can attack Biden, and it would be the deep state itself probably attacking Biden. So now they can turn the table around and blame it back on Trump supporters. You know what I mean? They're trying to stir division, anger, and hostility towards each other. This is what the UN playbook talks about. Vindel.
Yeah, I agree with you. Personally, I think this was an inside job for a bigger agenda. I think they played out extremely calculated. And the reason I think that is after, just seeing what was going on and doing a little due diligence on the strategies and plans they put in place, the security details, Secret Service, before having the president show up at a rally, they're extremely precise and calculated. And the point I'm making is that Secret Service and the security details, they don't make mistakes like this. Other law enforcement groups can, but when it comes to this, as David said, they scope it out days in advance. They even have documentaries on this to show you how they really plan these things out days, sometimes even weeks and months in advance. And at the same time, they also use drones to scope out the area. There's just too many things and events that don't add up. And I mean, if you believe, the way I see it is this is 100% inside job, 100%. I'm not sure who's responsible. Some sort of deep state connections is clear here, but at the end of the day, there's a 0% chance this was incompetence. I think it was deliberate oversight. And the interesting thing is, forget what happened. What are the outcomes of this happening? What are the outcomes? Well, this is actually good for the president because it increases his ratings. There's a high probability now, even higher than before, that he will become president, which is, good in the short term. But at the end of the day, presidents are puppets. They report to other masters. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. But funny enough, Trump is big on crypto. So, I mean, I feel like this, if he does come back, this could be a huge driver for the crypto markets and space in the short term, at least. But that's all I have to say on that. I'm not buying the bullshit, is what I'm saying.
Well, none of us buy bullshit here. That's why we do this show here, so we can kind of filter out all the noise. Edo, what are your thoughts on the bullshit?
Well,
I'm
I'll
just
make
kidding.
some comments, and when I conclude, I'm going to bring a very kind of innovative perspective from where I think this will take us. Now, there are some interesting things. First, I love that David took this video because just a couple of minutes before the show, I was supposed to share this exact video in our group. And I just think this is the most relevant video that I have seen on the subject. So the fact that David just shared with us here, I think that's just shows how we are connected, you know. And well, I also watched some interviews of people that were there, and the conclusion, obviously, I think if you have an IQ above room temperature, is that that's an inside job. They would never allow such a thing to happen. I mean, how come they were like 3, 4, 5 minutes with people trying to tell the intelligence services that someone is in the roof and nobody goes to check? I mean, that's the president over there is not like the average person on the street. So I think it's very clear to me that that's an inside job. Some interesting things is that this guy, the shooter, he was featured in a BlackRock video. Did you guys see that? So he was part of this video that now has been removed from YouTube, but the screenshots and some people even downloaded it, so you can find this exact same guy in a BlackRock video. Now, what are the odds, right? I think 1 in 100 million, something like that. And to not go so deep, because I think you guys already shared most of the essential things about this, but I think that could be part of a multi-generational plan, and that's something that's going to take over a decade. But they also have in their agenda to get rid of elected politicians. Well, they already did that in the Union European, and I think we are heading towards a blockchain-based decision system that's no longer going to rely on politicians, and they're going to use this to actually say, look, the flaws that comes when you have a human being as a politician, because he can get killed. And I think that the end goal is to tokenize even the politicians. So we're going to move towards a blockchain-based decision system. And I will live like that.
Incredible analysis. And you're spot on about this. This is what I was talking about, political reform. If you're going to, I'm telling you guys, this is in the UN playbook, is to destroy the trust between governments and the people so they can usher in a new kind of political system. Whether blockchain and artificial intelligence ties right into this, that's a whole different rabbit hole. And I think it will have some involvement to a degree. But what I found also interesting is that while all this was going on with the Trump thing, naturally, I was engaged with the story. I was doing my research on it. But once I stopped and I said, okay, I get it. And I believe that this was, whether it was staged or not, it was allowed to happen anyways. I was looking at some of the other related news that did not get any major attention while this development was unfolding, and that was in the banking industry. Banks were offloading large amounts of debt while simultaneously trying to monetize more of that debt. They were tightening lending standards, which is going to make it harder for people to borrow more money when they need it most. Mainstream reports even highlighted the growing issue of out-of-control spending on credit card debt, indicating that banks are again reaching their limits in the credit lines. So this is, this situation keeps going back to a credit crunch and a liquidity crisis, which has also been perpetuated by the World Economic Forum, the Bank of International Settlements, and the IMF only days ago when this was all happening. So I just think there's other major developments that are happening in the banking system and will continue to happen as all these other scenarios are unfolding, not to mention we are still in a currency crisis, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to talk about that here shortly in more detail. So, David, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree with you. From mic is muted, or am I unmuted? Okay, good, good. I think about it in this capacity, like you had just said there, that if it wasn't planned, it was at least allowed. Bare minimum, it was allowed, and that in and of itself, it would, in my estimation, put culpability on those that did allow it, and obviously utilizing it. And with respect to the global banking system, the way in which it is now. I mean, we have already in the United States, we have been told flat out by the FDIC, there's 500 banks, regional banks, that are on the verge of total collapse. Total collapse. And we know that this has been a consolidation of power. And the way in which these markets move, it starts with the debt market. And you got Janet Yellen that came out there and literally said that the Treasury is going to buy the debt. And central banks are buying debt like crazy. She said they're going to buy back all these bonds. Where are they getting the money to do that? Obviously, it's coming from the central banks. And it is totally a planned, orchestrated game that's being played right now. And we can see that, yes, this whole credit card crisis, the reason we have a credit card crisis is because we have an economic crisis like we have not. And people are living off of these credit cards. And of course, who grants the authority to issue that credit? Because remember this, liquidity, credit is a big part of liquidity, right? So when you get a credit card with a limit on there of $20,000, it's not that they have 20,000 sitting in some account in reserve. No, the moment you use that credit card, that money is created. It's added to the book. It's the Federal Reserve that approves those limits, not your bank. And a lot of people will think it's their bank that turned them. No, the Federal Reserve are the ones that have that jurisdiction. That's a fact, Jack. You can even call your credit card at your bank and ask, how the Federal Reserve plays in it. They will tell you flat out. So the central bank is controlling the liquidity. Now, they're talking about cutting rates. Now, they're not talking about cutting rates for you and I and making easy access to money for us. No, they're cutting rates for all these major banks. Why? So the major banks can go out there and do what? Gobble up the debt, gobble up the assets, gobble up all of, and it's a consolidation of power. They're just salivating, waiting for it to happen. And yeah, it is going to devastate the average person in ways that I think most people haven't even imagined yet. When you think, and I was talking about this in my coffee chat this morning, when you think of a currency reset, let's take a look at a country like Venezuela that has had multiple currency resets. Initially, the first one was 1,000 to 1. And I pointed out, look, if you had $10,000 in your bank, well, when the reset came, what happened? You had 1,000.
Right.
You know what happened? A few years later, they had another one. Do you know what the rate was then? 10,000 to 1. 10,000 to 1. So if you had 10 grand in your bank, you had $1 left. Don't kid yourself. A lot of people think that this could never happen in the West. It will happen. In my estimation, it is going to happen. It is a planned destruction. It is an orchestrated collapse.
100%.
And they're doing it in absolute timing. And at the same time, what are they gobbling up? They're gobbling up real world assets, gold, other commodities, this digital asset space. With the XRP, look what we just saw there when XRP dropped down there to 38.23 cents. Do you know the majority of wallets that were actually capitulating were the ones that were 10,000 or less XRP in them?
Mm-hmm.
That's a statistical fact. Do you know who was gobbling up like no tomorrow? The wallets that had more than 1 million. It was like a feeding frenzy. Yeah. And this is what they're leading us into it. And it's almost like they're pushing people to the point where they have to literally, and that's why we have this massive and credit card defaults off the Richter scale. So I believe that what I think it is really an ultimate. It's not just a knee-jerk happenstance reaction to market conditions. No, it is a planned demolition of the markets leading to the consolidation of power. And that's what I really believe it is.
Spot on, 100%. Like, that's exactly what's going on here. I want to hear from my brother's take. Mendel.
Yeah, well, we saw what happened in China. They're facing a full banking crisis right now, full scale. About over 40 banks just disappeared within the past few weeks. And the crazy thing is, This is overseas right there, creating it's a crisis taking place as we speak. And the thing is, the US right now, they're doing what they do best. They just buy time. So it's a matter of time before we actually start to see the smaller banks here start collapsing and going bust. I still believe that there's a higher probability that the bigger financial institutions like Bank of America, Citibank, JP Morgan have a better chance of survival because they're systematically financial important institutions. So, which means they have a higher chance of getting bailed out by the government because they're important to the economy. So the point I'm making is that I think we're going to see much more of bank failures this year going into next year until they really create some significant pain for people. And this is part of a bigger plan, which we discussed, a consolidation phase. They're consolidating the banking power into a few hands, a few banks that will remain standing as the little ones can't keep up with higher costs, interest rates, inflation, and the burden that the central banks and Federal Reserves are pushing onto them. This is part of the plan. This is just one phase of the plan, though, is wiping out the smaller banks. And you know what this encourages people to do? As they start to see smaller banks fail, your mom and pop, regional banks, they start to get more fearful. So what they do is they take their money out and they feel like, you know what, I feel more comfortable putting it in a bigger bank. So it's almost incentivizing through psychological scare tactics to move people from small banks to big banks. And people are taking action, doing it by themselves. But that's why I agree with you guys. Physical, tangible assets, gold, silver is one of the best hedges you can have, as well as capitalizing on these undervalued digital assets. Just as David said, when that correction happened, most people were capitulating, selling off, fearful, being scared, panic selling, really, while the big whales, which is really the insiders, the sophisticated investors, venture capitalists, they were acquiring massive loads of XRP and of course, other digital assets.
Yep. Edo, what are your thoughts? And nicely said, Vindel. And I think the term you were talking about earlier when you said the banks are too big to fail, they've rigged the international laws of finance to accomplish this, and it's called CIFY,
Yes.
right? CIFY. Can you tell our audience real quick, Vindel, what CIFY stands for?
CIFY stands for systematically important financial institution. So this is a label that was given to banks that are so important that they have to function and be around for the economy to function properly. So they gave them a specific label. But the interesting thing is, not to take you off direction here, but BlackRock is not even a bank. It's a hedge fund that manages capital. And they actually received the CIFY label, which is extremely strange and just tells you how powerful and important BlackRock is.
100%. Edo,
could I interject for just a quick second? Would that be okay?
Yeah, David, go ahead.
Just for a minute, just for one, like to make a point. I think that if folks really want to look into this, and because you've hit it spot on with CIFY and all that, but Jim Rickards and his Ice 9 is what comes to my mind.
I was actually going to play the video here in a second after Edo gets his words in. So I'll play the video for you guys, but Edo, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'll make some quick thoughts before you share the video. So there is some extra sauce to add to that. First, what Vandel said about the banks in China. We can't forget that Evergrande is also suffering with the financial crisis in China, and Tether is highly connected to Evergrande. So let's not forget about Tether. Now, second of that is that BlackRock, when you start to actually investigate who is behind BlackRock, that can track you down all the way to Bank of America, which is one of the key institutions, just like the Santanders, the HSBCs, Bank of America. Those are the financial institutions that are likely to stay around, and they are not going to collapse as many people are expecting. But surely the small banks are going to take the biggest hit. And if people still doubt that this can happen, sometimes you just have to look back. You don't have to look at China. But as we already spoke on this live streaming, Cyprus and Greece, which I live here, and I spoke to people in 2005, 2006 with the banking crisis. Literally, people woke up to their bank accounts going to zero. So that's something to consider. Now, I want to make some quick thoughts about the XRP price action, and a lot connected to what David said, that small accounts were selling while large whales were accumulating more. And that's the same scenario when we had the massive drop from the SEC lawsuit. The top 1 to 3% wallets were actually accumulating more. I was copying their strategy. I was buying more when we dropped to 16 cents. Now, the whole point I'm trying to make is that I got a lot of messages in the last days, and I see that a lot of people are making one big mistake. They are trying to time the markets, and some of them are trying to trade their XRP bags in the hope of buying at lower levels. And I think that's a massive mistake when you're talking to an asset that can literally jump overnight. And when XRP pumps, it usually does it very aggressively. So I know a lot of people who were extremely frustrated when XRP was hitting almost 60 cents in the last weekend. XRP was the top gainer amongst the top 100 coins momentaneously. So that shows that it was kind of not what we expect for the long term, but on the short term, that was a considerable increase in the price. And please don't make the mistake of thinking that you're going to buy lower, because in the long run, let's be honest here, if XRP is to do what we expect XRP to do, it will not change if you bought it 50 cents, 39 cents, 72 cents. I don't think in the long run that will make a huge difference, just like people bought Bitcoin at $100, $300, or $1,000. So guys, please don't make this huge mistake of trying to time the markets and trying to trade your XRP bags, because I promise you, when it decides to move, that will happen quickly. You will not have time to buy it. That's my short intervention before Versan shares the video.
I'm going to share the video, guys, but God, we have so much to unpack because, you know, I'm talking to my brothers here. We understand each other, and the audience. Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot to unpack in what you said. First of all, bank failures are inevitable in the current economic landscape. What we're experiencing, again, is a currency crisis. The dollar's purchasing power continues to decline. The global balance of power is shifting towards the east. The dollar's status as a reserve currency is under threat because of actions from our own politicians who are corrupt. You know, inflation is high. The dollar is losing value. Our debt is unsustainable, and it's becoming even more expensive to service that debt. And then, of course, many people are relying on credit cards. Do you believe that a banking crisis is inevitable? Absolutely. You know, so given the conditions, like, this is going to happen very soon. Now, that's interesting to how this plays right into the role of what BlackRock was trying to do and get that CIFY label. And it's interesting also that BlackRock is launching a Bitcoin ETF, an Ethereum ETF, a Solana ETF. It's like they're trying to hold a stake in everything. And then with the ICE-9 scenario, if they want to control everything, then they can freeze your assets at their will. And while all that's going on, the advancements that we see in Ripple and Stellar continue to lead the way. Again, owning XRP will eventually mean you become your own central bank. You are a central bank. You are a liquidity provider. Therefore, you don't need the central banks or the intermediaries. So you become the buyer and lender of last resort. And that's why I tell people never even think about selling your XRP ever, right? And that's why I believe having a diversified portfolio is so important, so you can actually take profits from elsewhere and not have to sell your XRP. And then the end game is XRP. There's no doubt about it at this point. So why the hell would you, sell your XRP? And it's counterproductive to sell your digital assets and go back into a fiat currency that's losing purchasing power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can carry on forever, guys. But let me put this video. How do I share this, guys? How do I share this? Present, right? Share screen.
You might
Here
have
we
to
go.
present the video and not just the screen, but try it.
I'll try the screen. Let's see if that works. We'll kind of make it bigger and
Senior advisor to BlackRock. As you may know, BlackRock is now the largest asset manager on the planet. It directly manages $5 trillion in assets, and it oversees another $11 trillion through its Aladdin platform. That means one firm controls more money than the GDPs of China, Russia, and Japan combined. Anyway, my dinner companion happens to work directly for BlackRock's CEO. As we nursed our white wine and the evening wore on, she let something slip. If I remember her words, she said something like, "They want to tell us we can't sell." What was she talking about? Who was she talking about? I placed a few calls, first to my contacts in Washington, then to a few people on Wall Street. Soon I was on a plane for a series of meetings to London, to Geneva, back to New York, then down to South America. As I began connecting the dots, a pattern emerged. It revealed a network of more than 189 individuals positioned inside the world's major financial institutions. Some of them hold senior positions inside the IMF, World Bank, and every central bank in the G20, including our own Federal Reserve. These elites share one vision, and they're about to make it a reality. That vision is one world order, one world taxation, and one world money. They've worked for years behind the scenes preparing to realize that vision. They've literally rigged the laws of international finance. Everything is basically in place right now, and there's essentially no way to stop this from happening. When the crisis hits, they'll flip the switch, freezing the global financial system. That will give them time to reset the world economy according to their vision. As the coming crisis unfolds, President Trump will be powerless to stop it. In fact, trying to stop them would probably weaken the president's power altogether.
That is amazing, Jim. Really. So, what did these elites want from your contact at BlackRock?
I think we can go on and on with this, guys. You could be able to check this out on Twitter. I do have the video on Twitter there, on my Twitter account, but the actual video goes into so much more detail. And I know that video is a little bit old, but just because news is, the video came out a while ago, doesn't mean it's not relevant today. Sometimes looking back into what has been echoed before is more relevant today than it was back then, like that video. And it's interesting because that's when Trump was president. Now, for all we know, with what's happening with BlackRock, that video again is more relevant today, because if Trump does become in power and takes office for 2024, and BlackRock continues to consolidate the financial system, and the powers that be are supporting them, the George Soroses and whatnot, the deep state, who knows, then it kind of falls into place. You know, problem, reaction, solution. At the end of the day, I think we all know where this is all going, and it's a reset of the monetary system. Are there going to be CBDCs? In my opinion, I think there will be CBDCs, because if you, given the, the conditions, again, the banking crisis, which is inevitable, recent financial institutions saying billions of dollars in credit card debt unlikely to be paid. This is a classic scenario for a problem, reaction, solution, where central bank digital currencies are likely to emerge as the solution because people don't have money. I know I went on for a while, guys, so I'll let you speak.
No, I would agree with that. I think central bank digital currencies are an inevitability. And even it doesn't matter who gets in. Now, I know Trump was campaigning saying, hey, look, if I get in, there's not going to be a CBDC. Well, I think once he gets in there, he's not really going to have a choice. I think the narrative at that time would be, well, look, the CBDC that we employed, wow, it's a way better deal than what was going to happen. That's kind of think how it's going to be sold. But they have no other choice. They are destroying the current financial system at a rapid pace. It's just getting ridiculous when you see the amount of money creation, the money supply. I mean, M0, M1, M2, and all broad, and the broad money supply, all of it. They are just dumping. All these central banks around the world are just dumping, are just pouring, and increasing the money supply to a ridiculous level where nobody is going to have genuine confidence in it. It's going to literally absolutely implode. And remember this too, a lot of legislation out there right now, when bank failures come in, is geared towards a bail-in, not a bailout. Well, what does that mean? Well, a bail-in means that the depositors are on the hook no matter what. And is not our financial system set up in such a way that you cannot help but be a depositor? What other mechanism do they have available for you and I in order to transact? Cash is like almost gone. I mean, you look, I think there's what, 4 or 5% of actual cash for funds on deposit. And look, in Europe, you got the EU that made laws that if you buy something with more than €1,000, you could, in cash, that's a crime. Is that not right, Edo? Yeah. And so that just seems insane when you got utilizing legal tender can be a criminal offense.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me that they are absolutely going to literally flip the proverbial switches. And you're right about, even though that video was a little ways back there, these guys plan this stuff out not in terms of like 1-2 years. Try 10, 15, 20, if not 100 years. Like they plan this stuff out way back. And I've shared on this channel that clip that I had of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who's a graduate of Klaus Schwab's, New World Leaders and all this kind of stuff. And what did he come out and say? This, situation that we're dealing with right now, this affords us an opportunity to advance our this situation agenda. So this has been on the table for a very, very long time. And they have accelerated it to the point where I think it's not going to be too much longer. I would imagine I'd give us 18 to 24 months max before you start watching global. The EU, I think, will be one of the first. China's already issued their digital yuan. Digital central bank digital currencies are coming out. Now, I want to address a quick question that I saw in the comments there. And it had to do with talk about the private ledger price of XRP and the public ledger price. Guys, there is no difference. The price, and I've looked into this in a big way because I, heard this come out. These private ledgers are CBDCs. The native asset on the CBDCs is in fact the native asset of that central bank. Now, XRP on those private ledgers operates as a bridge asset, not as a primary asset. And so right now, we are seeing public or private ledger. I generally don't believe that there's a disparity in price. There might be a disparity in utilization, but the native asset on a private ledger, to truly understand it, is that central bank's digital currency. Those are the only private ledgers that are utilizing this technology the way in which we're understanding it.
That's
so
correct.
I want to throw that out there and just throw that out there because that is a big FUD factor that has been thrown out, that there's this big disparity in price between XRP on the private ledger and the elites have access to this high price where we don't. No. It's the utilization of it. Now, I do believe a day will come when we will watch the price of XRP go to levels that most people can't even fathom. And I think it's because that we are going to see a massive supply shock when it comes to XRP. Big time.
There's not going to be enough. That's why the price would have to be high for it to function the way it needs to function. If you understand the technology, that's why the price is going to be very high. And
Can I enter?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, that would be one reason the price will be high. But the other reason is because in order to use it as a liquidity token or solution, you have to hold it. So they wouldn't be selling. So institutions that purchase it and acquire XRP will be essentially buying it and never releasing it back onto the market because they'll be using it. In order to use it, you have to buy it and hold it. So this will create more demand and obviously drive the price up because there's a total amount of XRP. There's a limit. So that's another reason why the price will be driven up over time, because institutions will buy it and hold it forever so that they could use it. But I did want to say on the banking system. So when I used to handle and manage people's financial affairs, whether it's with a checking, a savings account, business loans, in the fine print, when you open up a bank account with pretty much any bank, as David said, you're not immune to this in this environment. It's very difficult to get around it. But when you open a bank account, it could be a checking, a savings account, your average person, you go to a bank, get it open. It's actually in the fine print that the banks are receiving your permission to use your funds if required. And that's in the fine print. And the truth is, When you open a bank account, most people don't read through all the fine print because it's too many pages. It's too detailed. They use, difficult to understand language. That's on purpose. But the point I'm making is that you're considered an unsecured depositor when you open a bank account. And regardless if you're within the 250,000 Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation limit, which is how much they insure, it's up to 250,000, most banks, you still don't have a 100% chance of getting all your money back if something does go wrong with the bank. And this leads us into the video Versan played and what David was talking about, that there's still extreme high risk. And the reason primarily behind the risk is because, not the first thing, just because they can use your funds as required. As an unsecured depositor, which is anybody who opens a bank account, you're a very low priority to the bank. They don't see you as extremely important. So in the fine print, what they're saying is basically, if something goes wrong with our bank, and we're in a serious, we're facing a serious issue, we might need to use your funds to pay back our debt to get out of the hole. That's what that means. And that's what David was pointing on, a bail-in. That's the definition of bail-in. And as Edo said earlier, this actually happened in Cyprus in 2014. And there's a lot of people that never got a dime back, never got their money back. The way it works is you get a certificate, pretty much, or a certificate showing that you own funds or you have stock within that company that went bankrupt. And you might get it in the future, but there's no guarantee. And even if you do, it could take years for you to get it back. But the FDIC, which is the insurer of deposits, doesn't have enough money to insure a full blown out banking crisis. So they were designed to help one bank go bust, maybe two if they're lucky. But they don't have enough reserves and assets to fund and insure depositors of US banks have about 19 trillion in deposits.
Yeah.
And the FDIC has reserves approximately up to 300 billion, something like that. So they don't even have half the amount to cover people or multiple banks going down. So I want to say the risk is still there, and it's just going to increase as we face more geopolitical issues, liquidity crisis, and potentially leading up to what Jim Rickards speaks about, a banking freeze, where they can literally make a few phone calls and lock up the system. But that's all I have to say.
Well, yeah, the bank failures and bank runs are inevitable because fractional reserve banking, it confirms it. You know, what is fractional reserve banking? If you go to a bank and deposit money in there, if you deposit $10, they only need to keep $1 on hand in cash, while they can take your other $9 and lend it out to somebody else who's going to default on that because, you know, they want a nicer car, a nicer house that they can't afford. They're living above their means, and they only have $1 on hand. So when everyone starts, it's the perfect storm, and especially in this economic environment where everyone's going to run to the bank at the same time, and there's not going to be anything there. That is exactly what they've anticipated before they put all of this into motion. So yes, Mendel, you're spot on. Edo.
I was going to say, pardon the pun, they're banking on it.
They're banking, they're counting on it. That's right.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot to unpack. You guys touched in many subjects. And I would start with CBDCs. It's true that Christine Lagarde already said, well, despite the fact that we are already in stage 2 of the
Edo, your Wi-Fi is cutting out.
Oh, how is it going now?
Yeah, it's all right, I guess.
It's working fine until now. Well, if it, yeah, okay, I think now it's stable, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for that. So despite the fact that now if you do transactions above $1,000, you are a criminal, I took a lot of time, especially in the last 6 months, to actually look what's happening. And I took time to actually listen to the sessions on the UK, on the Parliament. And you have the head of the Bank of England, and he was asked, his name is actually John Cunliffe, and he was asked during a session, how likely are we going to go to CBDCs in the UK? And he answered 8 out of 10. So he gave a 80% chance of CBDCs in England. And he also mentioned about the digital pound. So I think we call it, let me just translate to English very quickly because I know in Italian it's boil the frog slowly, right? So
Hmm.
really comes down to this concept where they first give us a small choice, as is the case for the digital euro. So they said, no, it's okay. You can still use cash when they first announced the digital euro. And then a few weeks later, they changed the narrative and they said, yeah, you can use cash until a limit of 300 euros because, in the terrorist attacks in France, the terrorists actually used small transactions to bypass some regulations, and that allowed them to actually kill some people. Well, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but that's the way that the politicians are actually using the typical problem reaction solution. I would even argue that they might even orchestrate some crisis so they can come with the solution, which happens in their case to be CBDCs. So if there is an agenda, and that goes for America, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if it's going to be Donald Trump or it's going to be Joe Biden or whoever is in charge. They're going to get the agenda done, because even if the president decides to go against this agenda, well, how difficult is to get rid of him? He just had a great, if it was on purpose or not, but we had a great example in the last week. I mean, it was for 1 centimeter and he would be gone now. I think if they really wanted, he would be gone by now. Just making some comments. And now I want to add you something you were discussing about the private ledger. And
Hmm.
by the way, they gave great explanation on how that actually works. And I just want to complement that, because despite some people saying that the elites are going to use the private ledger, and some other people also used to say that Ripple doesn't, that they will not use XRP on the private ledger. That's another nonsense that I want to call out. And if you guys want it's very simple. There is a document, and I made a video about it. I think I'm the only person who found this document, and this document really didn't get enough attention, but it's a private letter from Ripple with the government of Thailand, okay? And there you have Ripple, who is presenting to the government of Thailand the private ledger, and they on this document they are advising the government of Thailand to use XRP as a settlement mechanism on the private ledger. And that's not something that Ripple puts out for people to see. That's a private letter with the government of Thailand. So if you want to look this document, go on YouTube, search Ripple Bank of Thailand. You're going to find my video is the only one. So you're going to really get access to this information. And just to
Yeah.
conclude what Versan said, it's all about Nostro Vostro accounts. So they need to hold XRP on their balance. That's why some people will say, but the transaction takes three seconds. No, every central bank in the world will be obligated to hold a certain amount of XRP. That's everything I
100%.
have to say.
100%. And, I put a tweet out that did pretty well on this, but I was trying to make it clear for people to think about it like this. If Ripple is building or constructing the payment rails to which all the currencies will be stabilized and bridged, the infrastructure for all of that, for the financial institutions and central banks, to which XRP is the digital asset that allows the facilitation of the instant transaction settlements, it is very similar to a digital gold. And I really think that Ripple using XRP was designed to completely reimagine and revolutionize the financial system. And I would like to touch on Bitcoin very quickly. All right. People forget that, Bitcoin was introduced through a 1996 white paper that was held by the National Security Agency, which in detail is called SHA 256. My brother and I, we talked a lot about this with Lynette Zhang. I'll leave that in the link in the description later. But this was designed to pave the way for the acceptance of digital money, which that goal, in my opinion, has been successfully achieved. But something else I want to mention is that there's so much propaganda out there and information that I think we're at that point in history where all of this propaganda is coming out and it's shaping the perspective of the masses, because many people really don't have the ability to think critically for themselves. They rely on what others are saying instead. What we try to do here is teach everyone how to think independently and understand the mechanisms behind these manipulative systems, so that way you can prepare to take the necessary actions for yourself. Think outside the box, because I think most people in this space as well are being led astray by other very unusual propaganda. You guys know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say too much more than that, but there's just so much division right now, and I think that's their weapon to keeping us in the dark, right? We have to foster love, kindness, empathy, and these are the qualities that really define us as human beings. And it's really sad what we see happening in the world today. It's just that so much of humanity, I feel like, is losing its soul to a degree. And I worry sometimes about the next generation, because I think they're going to face a very bleak future unless their parents break free from this manipulative cycle and teach their children how to think for themselves with valuable, genuine human connection. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I totally, I agree with that. I think for ourselves, we're in a spiritual war.
I was afraid I was on mute for a second the whole time.
No. We're in a war for our soul. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the way I've always looked at it, because I'm a person of faith, I approach this space as a person of faith. And let me just give a strict definition of faith. Faith is, from a scriptural point of view, is the evidence of things not seen, but things hoped for. Well, hey, most of the people that we talk to are in this investment world. And what are they doing? They're going out there, they're making an investment, hoping to see something they haven't yet seen. So as far as I'm concerned, they're exercising a measure of faith. And, when you see things play out like they have, and it literally, you can almost predict what the next step is going to be, because you've literally examined it. You've spent time researching it. You get to identify their tells, if you will. And you can almost gauge what the next step might be. And we have literally seen that, one thing that came out that I thought was absolutely phenomenal and amazing, and maybe you guys have seen the clip, but it's a clip of a spiritual prophet, so to speak, talking about how, he saw back, this is about a few months back in March, where, Trump, an attempted assassination, and where the bullet was going to whiz right by his ear and all this and that. That same guy. And I actually saw, I think I was made aware of this through Digital Asset Investor, one of his videos, believe it or not. The same guy had a prophetic vision about XRP, didn't even know what XRP was, but was asking the Lord about, investments and things in that. And XRP came up. What did he do? He starts researching it, finds out. And in his own words, and I guess you can look this up online, and whether you believe in this or not, that's obviously up to you. But I mean, it's pretty, serious, I don't know, confluence, whatever you want to call it, when he called out this prophetic vision of the bullet and all that. Well, he's out there saying, hey, look, God showed him XRP will be at a price of 10,000 or more. Well, I can't wait for that prophecy to be fulfilled. But the point that I'm making is to latch onto what you just said there. When from a prophetic point of view, when the scripture talks about the end times, it says, perilous times will come. Well, you know what it describes, perilous times? As people being lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, of being divisive, children against parents, parents against kids, spouses against spouse, this kind of stuff. It talks about the environment of division, not earthquakes, famines, wars. That's part of it, but it really defines all this. And that's where we're at. And you're absolutely right. Unless we wake up to the reality of what's really going on the inside, and we start to think about, hey, how am I going to react to it? Not so much about the actions, but my reactions to it. The character I'm building in me and the character that I'm wanting to see in my children. And still we start loving one another. Because what is the, the golden rule from a biblical perspective is to do unto others as much as you want them to do unto you.
Yeah.
Until we start really putting that into practice, I think we are doomed to make the same mistakes that we have been making for generations. And we are just literally falling prey to this globalist, or whatever you want to call it, this elite agenda that has been going on, not just for the last few years, but decades, if not centuries. I really agree with you on that, 100%.
Yeah. Amen. Vendel, do you have any last thoughts? Something positive maybe for the audience? Give them some hope.
Yeah, well, I just want to say in the whole world, there's 195 countries. We have facts and data showing us that 134 banks around the world are already working on central bank digital currencies. Now, how is that good news? It's good news because you know about it, which means you could do something about it to prepare yourself in advance. And that's why we emphasize making strategical investments in assets that are undervalued and holding real tangible assets. Because at the end of the day, you can't change the future of what the puppet masters want, okay? But you can change your own future and give yourself a better chance of having more choices if, God forbid, the world becomes extremely dystopian, which in my estimate, it already is, but it's just going further because they want more control. This is about control and power. But if you have this information and you understand what's going on in the world, look at everything from a biased perspective, critically think about things and make the right decisions. You can give yourself more opportunity. And when you build wealth and take advantage of the opportunities, when things do go in that direction, as they are, you'll have more choices. You'll have more options, and at the end of the day, that's what's important because you can do better for yourself and for your family.
Good spot. Well said.
That's it.
Edo.
Love the message from Vandel. If you know something, then you can take action. And that's exactly the blessing that we are able to see through the bullshit that they are throwing at us. And forgive my words here. But the fact that we can actually see what's happening, and this is just incredible. This prophet that came, and I saw this video, I was thinking about it exactly in the moment David said it. And it's just like he predicted exactly what's going to happen with Trump. And then comes a video, and this guy also did predictions about XRP. I mean, my mouth just dropped on that moment. Okay, so I do believe it's biblical. And just to conclude here, these things over here, it's $1 billion machine that's pointed against every single one of you. So you have two choices. You're going to allow the smartphones to control you, or you're actually going to use it to your favor so that you can actually take the necessary actions. You can actually educate yourself, and you can actually prepare for the future so that your future generations are going to benefit from this moment in time. Or you're going to look back and think, what did I do in 2024? Was I just scrolling on my TikTok? Was I just being an instrument of monetization for others? Or I was actually taking the necessary actions? I was educating myself. And I said this in one of my videos. All you need is a plan and patience and faith. I do believe you need God. You can't remove God out of the equation. So if you have a consistent plan and you have patience, I think you have a 100% chance of success. I just think you can outperform even virtually everyone in this world, even the educated people, the people who have 10 degrees, the master degrees. Just look how they behaved in 2019. All of these people that are so-called educated people who are working for others, receiving orders, and they are just ignoring everything that's happening. I just believe this is a great opportunity, and I want our viewers, the people who are watching us, to don't miss this opportunity. I think in our lifetime is the best opportunity. Maybe my grandchildren will have a similar one. I don't know, but I'm taking this one.
Amen.
Can I just jump on that real quick? And I want to throw this out there. I want to speak to our audience right now. Guys, this panel that we're all a part of, most of us have literally watched this happen in our lives, and we are getting out here as best we can to share this information. Look, not to just, pat our own backs, oh, look how much we know, but really to help people to make it through, to make it through. And I know that these guys right here, I know that they all provide their services to come out there and really assist you to understand what's going on. And I would just encourage you, really reach out, reach out. Look, the little investment that you would make in educating yourself and helping to build a plan together and working with these guys, with Verson and Vandel, with Edo. I mean, we also have it on ours, but I'm not blowing my own horn here. What I really want to say is you have got to really put this front and center. If you're out investing into this space, I kid you not, you owe it to yourself to invest that little amount to go out there and get the education, because we can do way, way more when we're on one-on-ones. And I know that the Black Swan Capitalists, they do one-on-ones and it is ridiculously inexpensive when you consider the value that you are getting is phenomenal in my estimation. I know people in this space that literally charge thousands for just 1 hour of their time, and they're not even near that. And this is why I would say you really do want to consider that possibility for yourself, because it will make the difference. And look, I wish Judy and I had the resources that are available now back in that last bull run, because we would have did 10 times better than even what we did do. I genuinely believe it. So guys, don't miss the opportunity, like Edo was saying there, to establish a plan. And there will come a day when the access to folks like these guys right here, you're not going to be able to get it. It's not going to be available anymore. When this run happens, I kid you not. Are you kidding me? When this bull run really shoots off, and it really happens, I'll tell you what, bigger decisions are going to be being made by folks like this. And right now you have this opportunity, and I'm just encouraging you, don't just get out there and consider it. And if that's okay for me to throw out there, guys,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank
I
you.
believe it's valuable what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But yes, this has been a fascinating discussion, and we will continue next Monday, guys. Okay. A lot more to talk about. Everyone, thank you so much for your support, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.